I remember thinking, this is amazing that someone actually writes books like for a living because, before I read the story, but then I remember thinking, wait, it says by so and so. And then I thought, that's amazing. So I think I did have the seed planted early on that, oh, this would be wonderful to be a writer. But it took me a little bit.
Mhm.
And, creative pursuits aren't, um, they weren't totally encouraged in the household where I was growing up. It was more like, okay, what's going to be really stable? And, how are you going to actually, make a living and a career?
Yeah, yeah, we had that household too, right?
Right.
Yeah, I know, it's like, "What? Television? You'll never get a job in that." Yeah, I hear you. I totally understand. So, what inspired you to write cozies? What was that? Where did that start?
Hmm. Cozies came with reading, well, actually at the library too. Um, I had finished reading some books, I think my age, and then I asked my mom what I should read next, and then she recommended Agatha Christie, and got me hooked to Agatha Christie. And then sometimes we'd read them together or trade the books back and forth. And I think that really launched me into it. And then later on, I found like all these wonderful, like cozy books with like recipes in the back. And I thought, wow, this is so neat. You can like have your mystery and then have all this extra bonus content in the back as well.
Mhm. Did you have a feeling that you didn't really wanna get into the blood and guts level of the murder? Was that part of the deal too?
Um, I, I definitely like the puzzle element, right? The who done it, like what is the mystery? Usually it's a murder, and how did they do it? And just to follow that traditional like path of finding the clues and trying to figure it out before the end
Yeah.
of the book. So I think I like that. And I also like the community. I liked being like transported to another place and being able to be friends with the characters in that world.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. And so speaking of characters, where in your characters do we find you? Are there pieces of you in one or two of them, or your main sleuth, or where do we see you? Where will we when we how will we know it when we read it?
I think parts of me are most of the characters, especially the protagonists. Like in my previous series, it was uh night market series, and there were two cousins who grew up and they well, kind of grew up together. And then they run a food stall. And then in my real life, I had cousins. We ran a family restaurant together, Chinese restaurant. And so definitely some parts are drawn from real life experience. This one was a little like the mom and daughter relationship in this book. They run this enchanted bake shop. That's from real life. That idea of like um, having that sweet connection, I think,
Mhm.
and probably more so because my mom passed in like 2015, and so it's sort of a little way to kind of honor her.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. I had no idea about that. And thank you for sharing that with us. So when we now, want to start talking about the book and we can know about the relationships and things you're talking about, let me just share this with everybody. The book, Star-Crossed Egg Tarts, a magical fortune cookie novel. Felicity Jen returns in the second book in the heartwarming and deliciously mysterious magical fortune cookie series. Gin Bakery caters a wedding. And the day of the ceremony, Felicity is finishing the cake. She's doing tiers of egg tarts. And like Jen told me, it's kind of like when you see the cupcake tiers at a wedding. So she's doing that as the wedding party arrives. But one of the groomsmen, Miles, is not there. He doesn't show up. So Felicity's best friend and local florist Kelvin, he steps in for him so that the wedding can go on smoothly until they cut the cake. When it's time to cut the cake, that's when Felicity finds Miles, the one who didn't show up. She finds his dead body. And of course, it's under the egg tarts, under the table of the egg tarts. So he's stabbed by Kelvin's, because Kelvin's a florist, remember, by Kelvin's garden shears. So, with that, the detective obviously is focusing on Felicity's good friend, and she starts investigating to prove his innocence. And in the process, she starts to find out some deep, dark secrets among the wedding party and the wedding guests. So, is that a fair way to kind of
Yeah,
get
that's good.
into
That sounds
talking about?
intriguing. Like, I want to read that book
Oh, who wrote
too.
that? You are so funny. Okay, so now, do you have a favorite paragraph that of the book that you'd like to read to us?
Yeah, I figured I'd read a little bit.
Awesome.
I don't know if it's my favorite, it's hard to figure out which one's your favorite, but I think it's kind of neat because it has so in the wedding, they have the wedding ceremony, but before the ceremony, they have um, a tea ceremony, like a traditional Chinese tea ceremony. And so this kind of paragraph is taken from that portion of it. It says, the tea ceremony continued without anyone acknowledging the Mr. Wu's rude comments. He's the father of the groom. At least Miss Hung, the mother of the groom, didn't spout foolish, unwanted advice. She did give the couple envelopes, but they weren't the typical red lycée ones wishing double happiness. They were instead a stark white, the color of death and mourning. The bride Leanne put the envelopes away with trembling hands. I wasn't superstitious, but even I knew this was an inauspicious way to start a wedding.
No kidding. I've heard of people doing polls of how long the couple will last, but boy, a death envelope that tops the that tops that poll thing. So, I love the way that you have this wedding party because all of us know how that a wedding is a stressor. It's a lovely time, but it's stress. It's family dynamics, it's all this stuff. And then you add the wedding party where you have your friends and frenemies or whomever. So tell us about why you set that up as a great sort of setting, the wedding and the wedding party and the dynamics of the relationships. Talk to us about that and about why you did that.
Yeah. Oh, well, weddings are great because, like you said, they're already stressful and
Yeah.
the emotions are running high. Um, I I love that it's the juxtaposition of like something that's happy, but then also something that could be ominous, right? Um, when the murder comes in. And then I think I like the idea of the close circle mystery. So you have the wedding party that you're getting to know, and then each of them could be a suspect. Who knows? And the dynamics of a wedding party are fun to like play with. So the relationships between each of the characters, especially to in this case like the groom and the bride, all of their attendants are like from different parts of their lives. So that's kind of fun to play around with. So I've got like at the groom, he's got someone who's like a college pal, and then someone from high school, and then his cousin who's the one who goes missing. The bride has a boss, and then a friend like all the way from kindergarten, and like a roommate. So these different like dynamics, I think, between uh, the bride and groom, and then the attendants, and then also between each other are kind of interesting as they play out. So it's
Mhm.
like you've got the close ties, and then you've got some tension of like these people also thrown together who might get along or might not get along.
Yeah, what I liked about that was, it made me think of my wedding, it made me think of my kids' weddings, it made me think of all those dynamics, but I think everybody can find themselves in that. Either you've attended a wedding, you've been in a wedding, but you see all these layers of friendships and tension and all that. So you're right, that closed circle, I think, really speaks to a lot of people. We can immediately relate, I think. So another interesting thing that you do, you have magical powers for your sleuth. And to make it, that's one thing that can be difficult to make people accept, but you do it. And so talk to us about her powers, and her cat has powers too. Talk to us about those powers and how you sculptured that, how you created that.
Well, when I first came with the concept of the magical fortune cookie novel, already in the title, like the subtitle, I knew I wanted to do something with um, the Asian pastries, and the fortune cookie I thought was great because it's like made Asian American invention, and then it also has um, not only the cookie but the message inside, and that's where things can get a little bit tricky, right? Because so in the Toljin family of the magic gets passed down for baking these pastries, and they always bring happiness and joy to the people who eat them. But then the message for Felicity, she actually ends up writing messages, handwriting messages, and those predictions can come true. And so that's why it's tricky, because sometimes the predictions will help her in her investigations, and sometimes they'll hurt the investigations. And
Mm,
then, of course, I have to create this whole like, how does this magic work? And it, like, she's also learning it in the story, in the first book, and then even in the second book, like, what do my powers? How to expand my powers? Can I polish them more? And so I'm tracking everything down in a spreadsheet, making sure that I continue the same kind of rules that will work with her magic. And then she has a pet. Actually, it's a bunny, but it's based partially on Chinese mythology. There you can kind of see this bunny, this moon rabbit in the back behind me.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that
I
one of
didn't
my
notice before.
yeah, one of
Yeah.
my kids made that one. But so Whiskers is the bunny, and Whiskers also has magical powers because, again, from the moon.
Mhm.
And so Whiskers' powers actually helps Felicity because uh, the rabbit will help her understand her powers. So when she strokes the fur, Felicity strokes Rabbit's fur, she can get like visions, and that will help her understand a little bit more about the magical world around her, because it's all pretty new, especially the predicting side of it.
Wow. Wow. I don't know why I keep trying to make Whiskers a cat. Did I say it was a cat? I keep doing that, and I've written down Bunny, and I knew it from reading the book,
I
but I
do
guess
have a cat series, so maybe that's what.
I know, but I knew of a cat named Whiskers, and I can't stop, I can't disassociate that. So now you loaded up your sleuth with a lot of jobs. Let me read them. She has a lot going on here. So her hands are full because she's trying to prove that Kelvin, her special friend, which I'm saying there's something up with them. There's more than just friends going on there. She's trying to prove his innocence. And then her estranged father shows up, and we don't know whether we should trust him or not. And then she starts to find out her friends have stuff behind her back. They have all these secrets. So first, talk about Felicity and Kelvin. I don't give anything too much away, but
Okay.
what can you tell us about? Because there's a little, I don't know, like, yeah, we're friends, but we're kind of cozy for friends.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those relationships where like, what's really going on? Because they've grown up together in this small town, and they kind of bonded because they're like one of the few people who don't look like the rest of the community, and so they bonded ever since they're kids, and they went on like their play dates together. And so, and he like is the next door neighbor, like in the store, like the cul-de-sac of stores, of
Right.
shops, but also like literally down the street from where she lives with her mom as well. And
Wow.
so he's got that friend, neighbor, kid I grew up with vibe. But he
Mhm.
also, in high school, did a promposal and asked her out to the prom. So there is kind of like that backstory of like he was asking her, and then she sort of brushed it aside and said, "Well, we can go, but let's go as friends."
Oh.
But she also feels like, when he left, 'cause he went away for college for a little bit and then returned back to Pixie, which is the fictional town, and she missed him. So there's a little bit of that too. And she's like, huh, what is this? And kind of trying to figure out how she feels.
That's interesting. I like the way that you played that because it's almost a delicate treatment of that relationship. I don't know if delicate's the right word, but it didn't punch you like, no, she just wants to be friends. It's kind of like it keeps that mystery going. And so I don't know if I even said that right, but in my head I know what I mean. Just, so now the dad, so, it was such a contrast. She was excited to see the dad that she didn't get to know. And her mom was like, ugh, her mother was immediately, this is bad stuff. So, is there anything you could tell us about that won't give away too much?
Mhm. Um, so Felicity's dad hasn't been around for a long time, you know, left to when she was a very young baby. And so, you know, the mom's like, this person hasn't been around. And you'll find out, like, if you read the book, like, kind of what happened, because the mom actually doesn't really tell Felicity anything, only that she doesn't want to talk about her dad.
Yeah.
So Felicity's like left kind of wondering, but at the same time, she respects her mom and her mom's opinions and her decision to like be silent. But Felicity at the same time always kind of has this like, fantasy notion of, "Oh, what would it be like to have that like quote unquote complete family, or like, what is my dad really like?" And so I think um there's like a push and pull in that relationship. And when he returns, and it's like, wow, he's back. He's at the wedding. So like, is this something that, is it like a destiny? Is it like he's come back and is looking for her? Like, you know, what is really going on?
Well, when I read mysteries, everybody's a suspect. I mean, I know it's just, I have a tendency to do that. I'm suspicious of everybody. The guy delivered a paper. Oh, he's a suspect. I mean, it just could be any. So I said, oh, okay, that's suspect. But what I also did, everybody in the wedding party was a suspect to me. I mean, everybody who even showed up. And so, just tell a little bit about the dynamics you created with that, because that was very realistic. When you go through, like you said, you have friends at different times and things change. And maybe, you're not as close as you thought you were and things like that. So you really got into that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that I do goes into process, because I go and I create these character profiles in the beginning, and I honestly, I make everyone a suspect. Like, literally, they're like, you could do it, or you could do it, or you could do it, right? And they have like their different reasons and their different secrets, and then just as it goes on, then you know, then there's like a revealing, right? Like layer by layer, it's like, okay, it's not this person, it's not that person, then, who's the final person it's going to be?
That's amazing. So, okay, so we want to talk about process next, and I always want to ask words of wisdom because everybody has something to share, from their writing journey. And well, first of all, let's get it out of the way. Planner, plotter, pantser. So where do you fit? Who are you with that?
I'm in between. I'm actually like a plantser if I had to classify myself, because I like having that overview outline of like what's going to happen.
Mhm,
Um, but then when I'm writing it, like scene by scene, I'm okay with things shifting.
mhm,
And if my characters do something, or they're saying something, or they're thinking something different than I initially planned,
mhm.
I go with it, right? I'm like, okay, the character wants to do this, so that's fine. And sometimes I surprise myself as I'm writing, and I had to rewrite certain things.
So, do you outline pretty much when you say over? So you kind of get a big swatch sketch
Hmm.
of where you think it's going.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then you stay open to the characters kind of guiding you.
Hmm.
Interesting. And you said you had a spreadsheet. Do you do spreadsheets and things like that for every book, or is it just for certain things?
I do it especially for a series, just to um A, to like keep all the character names and their traits, and then whatever possessions even they have and things like that, to keep it all organized so
Yeah.
that I can remember them. But I also keep it for each, just to like make sure I have certain things that I want to have happen, or actually, and also name wise, to make sure I don't multiple, like, Henrys or something in every
Yeah,
book.
right. So, what are the words of wisdom? Everybody's journey is a little bit different, but and so that's why it's always cool to hear, what you've learned and what you want to share about your learning experience in
Hmm.
your writing journey.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is uh I like to finish anything I write. So I would encourage people to finish whatever they write, whether it's like a short story or it's their manuscript. Like, even if that manuscript isn't the one that gets sold, there's something to just completing it and following through. I think that just naturally hones your craft.
Mhm.
And also, then like you can write more than just the beginning, right? You can write the beginning, the middle, and the end. And
Mhm.
then who knows? You could use that manuscript later, or you can use parts of it and use it in a short story, or you can take themes from it. So I think nothing is wasted. So I would always say, try to finish what you start, because that will also help you in terms of making sure you meet deadlines, which are quite common. So
Mhm.
so definitely, to keep at it. But on the flip side, I would say also to have some grace for yourself as you're writing. Like, it's okay to take breaks. I feel
Mhm.
like I myself know that it's good to stop, to pause, to refresh, to refill my creative well. I I write on the weekdays. I leave my weekends free, usually for kids and my family. But also because when I do write on the weekends, I find that it's really hard actually for me to continue, because I haven't had that break. So
Yeah.
I would say breaks are fine, or vacations, enjoy your vacation. Um, when things happen, so when the pandemic happened, I had a really hard time. But I was like, it's okay for a little bit. And then thankfully I had community. So then, you know, I had a group of writers who helped me to continue to like put forth words. And so that was really good.
Mhm.
And the final thing I would say was just to only compare yourself with yourself. So
Ah,
instead of like looking at other people and like what they're doing and their accolades, look at what you've been doing. Like, I think it's easy to look at other people and then feel like, I don't know, annoyed, or feel less valuable or something. Uh, but if you look and see where you yourself have come, like, let's say 3 years ago or 5 years ago, right? Then you can actually figure out what progress you've made. And I think
mm,
that is encouraging, and it reminds you that you are growing, that you're, a writer who's producing, or, you know, progressing and meeting certain goals and milestones that you've wanted to make.
wow. That is so awesome. In everything in life, we really shouldn't compare ourselves to others. Our paths are so unique, and that's so beautiful that you gave us that for writing as well. Now, I had here, I was going to ask you about your process, but did
Hmm.
you kind of answered that already, right? But I meant in terms of beginning, that crazy middle, and then the end. Is there something you can tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, first, I would say another thing I process is just take the time where you're creative, and like for me, it's shifted across the years because kids again. So like, when do I write? But right now it's mornings, so I make sure to keep that time. Like I don't let other people take that time away from me. So to do that. But then in terms of the writing, the story, the middle, and the end, for the middle, I actually like to throw something in there. So for Star-Crossed Egg Tarts, I don't think it's that much a spoiler, but so in the beginning you have the murder, but then in the middle, like something else happens within the wedding party, right? And so that's like, oh, there's like another thing that happens. And so I think I always like to kind of push that action or tension in the middle as
Yeah, to
well.
be intentional about the middle, right?
Yeah,
Because it's hard to keep the momentum, right?
yeah. And then for the ending, I just like to make, well, I write cozies, so I tend to like have try to like land it in like the nice spot of, justice is served, and then some some kind of callback to also the beginning of the story. So I'll look kind of at the beginning and kind of see what kind of themes or what like maybe even the setting. It depends on the story, but some sort
Mm.
of callback to the beginning, so that it feels like a complete circle.
Nice. You had you mentioned the red versus the white envelope and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there some other cultural insights that you could share with us? I know the tea ceremony. I've attended one of those, and
Mm-hmm.
because my daughter-in-law is Asian, and so I really enjoyed that. Tell us a few more cultural insights because that's so special and unique.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to do tea ceremony because I wanted to have that uh, ritual, and also like the respect for the elders that comes with that tea ceremony. But for other things, I think some of them are not as positive, I would say. So, because in this book it has to do with like weddings and relationships, and so um, part of it is like the jinn magic gets passed down from mother to daughter. So it's very much like down that matriarchal line. And one of the things that kind of comes up is that each baker can make their own pastry, uh, but they can't really get outside help because then it doesn't really work. And
Mm.
there's like a little line in there about how like, well, like they didn't figure this out till later because, back then in China, like nobody helped them. They didn't realize that, people couldn't help them make it. So there's that. And then I think there's things about different relationships. Like you can see um, not not only with the bride and the groom, but also with the parents of those Leanne and Colton are the bride and groom. And so you can see the interactions with the parents. And one of the relationships, which was interesting, was I think um, Leanne's parents, who they're married, and but they're in like a comfortable arrangement, right? And they were matched, which can happen. Like my aunt was matched with my uncle, right? And it was like because you're there for companionship, and there's not this idea of, oh yes, there must be this beautiful romantic love that happens. It's like, okay, no, you're together. That's what it's like, and that's you should be okay with that. Uh, and it
Yeah.
comes, and they're doing this, and it's funny because they talk about it, and it comes out actually during this like mahjong game in the book where they're like, you know, trying to like win the game, but they're also like talking about the relationship too.
That's wild. Well, once again, you added so many enjoyable elements and enlightening elements that really keep moving the stories along. And so it's really enjoyable. So, I want to recognize the fact that you're a former president of Sisters in Crime, and thank you for your service because that's a lot. I mean, you're writing, you have life, you have all these other things, and people who volunteer at that level, I think we should acknowledge that. And so, how has Sync played a role in your writing journey?
Well, Think is amazing, which is why why I volunteered. Because, well, I mean, just even the concept of Think, right? and like the roots of advocating for those who needed and deserved spotlighting, right? Remember, writers was just not getting acknowledgement. And I mean, we've come a long way, but there's still more. But the roots, and then also like the community. I remember when I first wrote my mystery, some another author, established author, had pulled me inside and said, "Oh, have you joined Sisters in Crime?" And I was like, "Oh, tell me more." And so after I joined, I was like, I get it. You've got, I mean, the resources, of course, I mean, the all the benefits of sync membership and at a really affordable price, I think. Um, the value of that. But then also just the support and the community of writing can be kind of lonely and not necessarily understood by those closest to you, like your family or friends, but other writers get it. So I think having that boost and encouragement for other writers, whether it's them cheering you on, whether it's them just being inspirations by already being out there,
Yeah.
or even diff different things that come up, like whether it's conferences or because we have one in SoCal where it's MWA and Sisters in Crime do like a joint conference together. And so whether it's something like that or whether it's the reason I'm on a group blog is because someone reached out from Chicks on the Case and talked to me about it because I had said I want to be and appreciate being part of community. And so I think these all come with this, with Sisters in Crime.
It's amazing because, we meet no matter where we come from, no matter what walk of life or culture or whatever, we all have that thing in common. And you're so right. It's wonderful. So thank you for that. You have a nice surprise at the end of the book, a recipe, and then a
Mhm.
tip about flowers. You want to say something before we take questions? I thought maybe you could tell a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. So well, I actually have one for each of the shops. So there's three shops. So it's the bakery, the floral shop, and then the candle shop. And so they each have one little thing. But for this book, I have this almond cookie recipe, and it's sweet because it actually my daughter sort of gifted me the recipe. It was one of these where we like baked during the pandemic, and I mean, we made bread too, but we also made like almond cookies. So
Nice.
um so it was really sweet that I was like, can I use your recipe? And she's like, yes, go
That's
ahead.
lovely. That really is. And the floral tip, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Floral tip. Yep, I do a floral tip. Because the wedding, so it's like, boutonnieres, and then I do the candle because there's a you can kind of see on the uh so this is the egg tart cake. And
yeah,
then here there's like little tea lights in this like lace candle holder. And so the tip and the craft in the back is to make these holders for the candles.
that's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, now, can we open up the floor to questions and Rick will read those questions for you.
I will stay off the video.
Okay.
I have
Chicken.
a, I have a face for radio. Okay.
Oh gosh, stop.
This is kind of a self-answering question. Does Sacramento area have any bakeries like the one Jennifer mentions in the book? And then we get, I think it was Dover said, you can get egg tarts and pineapple buns at Asian Pearl, a dim sum restaurant. Quite yummy. But does anyone else? I guess we can leave that to the discussion. If you have something in the chat, a really good place to get uh, the bakery goods, let us know.
Well, and I told Jen that I had egg tarts in Portugal, and then I knew of them Burmese because of my daughter-in-law, Burma, and then I saw hers, and I was like, "Wow, egg tarts are a thing." I guess I'm I'm the last to know this, right?
Yeah. Well, here you go. Has Jennifer thought about rewriting the mystery she wrote in the 6th grade? I'm all for vitalizing old stories.
That's a great question.
I don't even know if I have it. I should look back. I did keep like a bunch of stuff from high school, I know. Some of that probably should be taught because some of those are like really bad poetry, but I never use those.
There's always pseudonyms, you know? I haven't read the series yet. How did Felicity get her magical powers? Can you
Okay,
give
so
that away?
yeah, I mean, it's basically it gets passed down, but there's a passage I love from the first book about sort of the legend behind their magical powers, and so it's the idea of it comes it's like a celestial blessing that comes on one of their ancestors because uh they only had like they're in like a times of famine and they only had like a little bit of like flour left, right? And instead of baking something for themselves, they baked it for the elder. And so then it becomes like a blessing of magic to the family. And they continue to have this magical baking power that's passed down. And so yeah, it's one of the like prettiest paragraphs, I guess, in the first book as their like origin story.
Excellent. How did you pick the name Kelvin?
Oh, so I was thinking about different modern names, and honestly, that was sort of a little bit of a scientific joke
Yeah.
to make it like Kelvin, like the temperature, and so I added it in for like my nerdy sense of humor.
Yeah. How about the town? Is it Pixie or Pixley?
It is Pixie because if it's small size and it's fictional, but there is a Pixley
I know.
that is real, and I actually have like a friend who's from there, because I grew up in Fresno, and so um, I still have friends like in the area, but it's yeah, it was not necessarily based on Pixley, but I figured it was a nice play on words too. And then also there's like Pixie as a small town. And there actually is another Pixie in one of my other series. It's like a side character in my Sassy Cat Mysteries, which is actually set in LA, but it's like a pet groomer. And her talking sassy cat. Maybe that's where you got the cat from, Myra. I don't know.
Maybe so, I know.
There's a
And I
link there
told myself,
somewhere.
don't say cat, it's a bunny, and I blew it.
I,
I blew it.
you'd be like cat bunny.
Yeah. You know, the wedding party sounds like quite a challenge in terms of a mystery novel. Did it take many drafts before you had all the characters and their motives figured out?
Well, that's the fun part of the research. I like to do like a bunch of the research beforehand. Well, not only about weddings, which in this case was interesting because I actually did a lot of wedding research, even in like the cake topper and all these other things, what kind of favors, but also the characters being like, who could I use like for the different attendants? What kind of relationships can I pull on? And then, like I said, making those character profiles that really helped in the beginning to just really have different characters, different personalities, and then also like different possibilities as suspects.
Now, this is the question June asked, but I was thinking the same thing. Is there a recipe for fortune cookies at the end and with how to fold them?
There is in the first book, and it's quite hard to make these like I was making at home and I'm trying to like get the right texture, but it's quite difficult to achieve. But folding them, I there's actually like a device you could use, but the trick is you have to fold them when they're like warm, but hopefully not too hot because you don't want to burn your fingers. But you could use gloves. But you can also use like a glass and you can fold them over the rim of a glass. So then you can get that curvature.
Huh.
Sounds as if the humor is alongside the mystery, and I'd love to hear about how she writes humor into the stories, if that's the case.
Hmm. Um, it's interesting because it's like Ill Fated Fortune was nominated for the Lefty Award for Best Humorist. And I feel like sometimes I don't even know that I'm inserting the humor, but it comes up because of the characters, like either the characters and how they interact with each other or the situations they get themselves into. I mean, there are some like Kelvin likes these like flower jokes or punny, but I don't, I'm not sure that's like the kind of humor they're talking about. But part of it is just like organic, I think, to character dynamics and characters put into like interesting situations.
Well, here's one I love. Okay. And why did you pick the bunny for the pet instead of a rat? We'll never guess where that came from.
Hmm. Well, Lori, no. The I was gonna say, Lori, just stay tuned for book 3 in this series because there might be something there for you. But the bunny is because there's the moon rabbit mythology. So it's a Chinese myth that there's not like a man in the moon. There is a bunny in the moon who mixes the magical elixir of immortality. And so this bunny that's in the moon is the bunny that comes down to the doorstep of the Jin family and, graces the family with her presence. And so that's why the bunny.
Well, unless someone wants to type in another question, that's all we have for right now.
Well, yeah, that's true. I don't see
I'm
anything.
looking, I could have missed one, but
No, I don't think you did. Um, you know, I love the fact that we got amazing insights on your perspective. And, what stuck out also when you talk about the fact that you're not intentionally trying to be funny. I've had a couple of comedian friends who say, when you try to be funny, you're not. It has to be organic. It has to be something that comes kind of naturally. And so it seems like it comes through to your characters. But also, I just think that you have this amazing way of blending culture and story and characters and plot movement all together. And it just feels like a really good ride. I mean, so that's my 2 cents for what that's worth.
Oh, thank you so much.
Karen, were you about to say something? I see you popped up on the screen.
No, actually, I see that Dover made an interesting comment. You might want to look at that.
Yeah, Rick, do you want to read that? Rick?
sorry, I got a voice for radio too. It's interesting. The Japanese version I heard as a child was that the bunny made, is it mochi? Mochi?
Yeah, mochi.
Mochi
Yeah,
for the moon goddess.
Yeah.
yeah, that's delicious too. But no, yeah, this one in the Chinese version, it's not. But there's a moon goddess as well. There's a whole story with that. But yeah, ours
Well, I was looking at where Dover said the Portuguese egg tarts have an interesting story to them. Is that what you were talking about, Karen?
No, it was the bunny made mochi for the moon goddess.
Oh, okay. I need to catch up. Okay, now I see it.
But if you look at the moon, you can see a bunny.
Ah,
Mhm.
that's pretty awesome. So, well, if nobody has anything else, I think we're good, but I do want to leave space if somebody has a question or comment or anything that they wanted to add.
Should we put everybody on now? They can
Yeah,
enjoy the
please.
video,
Please.
and I'll unspotlight you for a little bit. Oops,
Is that everybody?
I can't unspotlight you.
Oh,
What? Oh, I see. There.
There we go. Okay.
okay.
Yeah, so if people want to turn on their videos and unmute themselves, if anybody has any other questions for Jennifer or Myra, just go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks so much for joining. I think it's been a really fun conversation.
Always.
Death by Bubble Tea was really good. I haven't started this series yet, but I like that one.
Thank you.
That's great.
Well, if nobody has, oh, Andrea.
How is the book accepted within the community of people that are actual bakers of Chinese things? Because it doesn't seem stereotypical. I don't have any background with things like that, but I felt very comfortable with that. Are you getting any feedback from people who are actually in the communities that have bakeries, have in a Chinese community?
Hmm. I don't know if I have any specific from like bakers. I think I only have comments from either like librarians or book staff or actually Asian Americans who talk to me about my books. But it's more about like the representation side and being able to like find themselves in characters and appreciating that they can relate to things like food or
Yeah.
different traditions.
It's interesting that culture is food, language, and the third thing I always forget. But it is, those are the markers of culture. And I didn't learn that until late in life. But I think, somewhere deep inside, that. But it's really interesting when people even move to other places, that's what they carry with them: food, language, and that third thing that I forgot.
Could it be stories?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Hey, Karen, was there anything you wanted to mention that we missed before we started recording that you'd like to tag on to the end?
Oh, yes. I did neglect to say that our next meeting is April 19th with Scott Ellis, and he'll be talking about audiobooks. So please register at capitalcrimes.org. And thank you, everyone.
Can I make a request before we close?
Sure.
Please, 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 can you put the recipe for the pineapple buns somewhere? Please. It's like my favorite dim sum. Please.
So Jennifer, what do you say to that? Can you do that?
I actually don't have a recipe for pineapple buns. That's the one I don't have. I mean, I've seen recipes for it, but I haven't created one myself. So sorry.
Come on.
She writes fiction.
It's hard. It's hard to make those buns.
That's great.
Myra, I Googled culture encompasses food, language, and what else, and then I got a whole ton of other things, so no wonder you couldn't remember.
Thank you.
I put it in the chat.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. So I'm not a total screw up. Thanks.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you, Myra, as always, and thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jennifer.
Thank you,
It was
Myra.
wonderful.
It was
Thanks so much,
great. It
guys.
was really great.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Jennifer. Thank you, Myra.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Yes.